Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with John. We're going to be talking about the um, prayer that the Olympics supported for paganism. So, looks like Olympics are going back to paganism, John.
That's exciting.
It that is a word for it.
So I read the prayer, but I didn't know how long or how often that prayer took place. If that was since they restarted the Olympics recently, or if that was more recent than this.
Oh, okay. So, like, it came out a few days ago, and it's kind of like a kickoff. Like, the Twitter for the Olympics posted the video for it, and so the video is a woman putting down some incense, burning something, um, and saying a prayer to Apollo and Zeus,
Yeah.
and so I mean, there's like a whole bunch of problems with that, like as like an indicator, so like what this indicates for society, but also like the prayer itself seems fundamentally flawed given like the history of Zeus.
Yeah.
um, but where do you want to tackle this thing? Like, would you like to start with the prayer, or do you want to start with um, the societal critique?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a prayer. It's a literal prayer to Zeus and Apollo. Now, people will say like, "Oh, this is symbolic," or whatever have you.
Well, right,
Um,
like, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things to me because the Olympics are international, they aren't beheld to any specific religious group. But
Right,
that being said, if you have Muslims and Jews and Christians, which make up over half the world's population, and then the next largest group would be like agnostics or atheists, unless you want to count like all the Chinese as Buddhists or something, then
right.
nobody believes in that. So, like, why do it?
Yeah, like practically speaking, we're talking like a very low percentage of people even remotely believe what monks transcribed to reflect what people believed back then.
Right.
Right, like um
It's just
but
very
like,
strange.
well, I mean, I think it's a message, right? Like, so when, let's see, the idea of like the Apollo god of the sun, and the idea of light, send your rays and light the sacred torch for the hospitable city of Paris. And apparently, like, so there was actors saying that. That was an actress saying that, pretending to be a priestess. So there was like a form of like they didn't really mean it. However, it's really
Yeah.
weird to say a prayer you don't mean, that isn't just, like what I just did, where I'm literally just reading off this. Like, she's acting, she's getting into it. She's like, um she's like, this is like where it's weird, because some people will say, like, movies, like, people will do acting and say prayers for it. And it's like, you got to be careful, because sometimes people actually say that. Like, I guess an example would be like, you can't really blaspheme act. Like, you can't act out blaspheme and blaspheme at the same time, and it
Yeah.
just be acting. Like, you are blaspheming, and you're doing it for acting. And so like there's a disconnect to say, well, he's just acting it out. He's not really saying the Lord's name in vain, but he is. So it's like the same thing here, where it's like I think it's supposed to be a message, for like I don't think it's a hopeful one. Because like you said, who are they appealing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's another one of those things that it's like, as Christian societies go, you're going to have like these pagan things. And it's funny because they had a guy, he was like a Satanist, occultist, right? But he was an atheist Satanist. And these guys were like, well, you need to implore demons to help you make this decision. And he goes, well, I've never done that, but like, I don't really believe they exist. And then he implored demons and then they showed up. And it
Yeah.
was like, and so you're kind of like, just don't mess with it. Like, why would you?
Right. Like, because like from our standpoint, like Apollo and Zeus, they either don't exist or they're demons. Like those are the
Yeah.
options. Um, none of it good. And then so like the reading the rest of the prayer that they said, and you, Zeus, give peace to all peoples on earth and wreath the winners of the sacred race. And I think that's really weird, like on several levels. One, I don't know what sacred race, unless you're literally like, are you talking about humans? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Like, because
I would
obviously,
assume in the context of the Olympics, it would be like an actual race, maybe. I don't
right,
know.
but which one are we talking? Swimming, running, um, like there's several of them, and so like
Right.
the idea that we're gonna like say of the sacred race, and sacred race is capitalized, so like what that references is something that they actually deem to be like holy, and from that perspective, and although I do think it's funny that it's a bunch of women. Like if you see like if you see it, it's a bunch of women in white doing this for Zeus, and I'm like, do you guys like know the history of Zeus? Like, do you know
Yeah.
most of his stories are not like being nice to women?
Yeah, but that's like all paganism is rebranded.
Right.
Like it's like all of these things will be like, oh no, like it's a sweet spirit or a kind spirit. And it's like, no, no. Zeus Zeus had many relations with many women in many different both savory and unsavory ways. We're
And
gonna
animals.
just and animals.
That's all I'm gonna say. The other thing that I think is very important is that they purposely picked, and I'm getting this from notthebee.com. They purposely picked the site of Olympia, the temple to Hera, like on the side there,
Mhm.
where they are. So like, so you have an act. This is like weird. So you have an actress saying a prayer as a priestess in front of an archaeological site of Olympia that used to be a pagan temple to Hera.
Sure.
And I'm just like, okay, well, like that's a little much. You know what I mean? Like to say that like religion isn't part of this. I think that's like I think that's very disingenuous. Like
Yeah.
this is very clearly a at least a jab, an edgy jab at, like what you said, um, half of the world.
Yeah, I mean it's also just like dumb. Like it's like why like there's literally no purpose for it other than like I don't know who greenlit it or thought it was a good idea or I don't know.
Well, right, because like you're talking about. I mean, this is gonna get advertisement, like we're talking about it, right? So like people are gonna know about the Olympics and that it's coming up, and they did something provocative, and so it's we're kind of like falling into that, but at the same time, you very clearly have to point out like, hey, this is like paganism, like this isn't okay. And can you imagine if they said a prayer to Zeus right before the games? Like, can you
Yeah,
imagine? They say, what are you going to do with half the population? Are they just going to like the Catholics, the Christians? Are they going to just drop out? Because
right.
at that point, like that's arguably like that is like a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean the whole thing like to me I feel like I don't take offense to the thing itself. Like I think the thing itself is stupid. But I think this view of softening paganism or making it more mainstream when like we got rid of it for a reason,
Yeah.
that it was and I was having this discussion with somebody recently. It's like pagan religion, and people say, oh, religion's a means of controlling people or something. But like pagan religion is literally a means of controlling people. Like the Romans rolled up and like changed all the Greek gods to Roman gods so that they could control people. Like the Egyptian gods were rebranded as Greek gods. Like there's all kinds of like the division of gods was used to conquer people so often that like the pantheons were assembled by basically like you would have two people that worshiped one god, the same god, but then they said, oh, well, I need to conquer that group. So that's really that god's son or cousin or whatever. And like they fit into a pantheon, but your god is less good than my god. And it's like, yeah, like paganism was horrible and was used to kill infants and, you know, murder firstborns and sacrifice to a Caesar god man that walked around claiming that he had the divine right to rule. Like, it's all terrible. Like, don't bring it back.
Yeah, so like the formal name of what happened, in case your history lessons didn't go over this, it's called Hellenization, is what John's talking about. And it's crazy because when you think about it, like now we have a more effeminate culture, right? Like we have a culture that is like really geared towards women in a lot of ways. And effeminacy, which is different than feminism because it deals with men acting in a way that goes against their nature. And what tends to happen in paganism, as you described, is, and as history shows, is that even though it'll postulate a female matriarch, like I guess that's redundant, but like a matriarchy, it's actually the patriarchy that seeks control and gains it.
Yeah.
And keeps it, because like that's all history is. Like it's weird how a lot of like when you look at history, you're like, okay, so like Catholics are getting like this weird at these weird attributes of pagans, like paganish titles that don't even apply to them. But it's like a carryover from like the pagan cultures that they've dominated. Like do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Like, and it's like, okay, well, under pagan Rome, women couldn't speak like women. They had to speak like children. Like, that's a fact. Like, that's just, they were equivalent to children. And it was Catholicism that brought them up to be equal. And like, that's completely missed in today's age. Like, we don't, like, because we don't teach that. We don't teach, you know, ancient history. We teach American history. And even that's like revised heavily.
Yeah, no, it's just, I think it's people not, if you read the stories of Zeus, you would not in a modern society be able to invoke the name of Zeus for anything. He's definitely not a savory character to put in your prayers and all that.
Yeah. So
like I don't know. It's just, it's all that silly stuff. It's like the endless contradictions of modern society where it'll be like, oh, we're not going to go with that Christian stuff. That's dumb. Let's go with, and then just something objectively worse by their own standards in every way.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I forget what the saying is, but we're just in a time of weird bedfellows. Like you'll have like where a lot of people are mixing together that you wouldn't expect to mix. Like this is an example of that, where libs really pushing something like this. I mean, it doesn't make sense exactly how you stated. It goes against a lot of their tenets that they throw at Christians and what they're starting to do against Muslims. But even that's weird. Like libs and Muslims is a very weird combination because in a lot of cases they're more stringent on things than we are.
I'll tell you who's going to win that fight, though.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The libs are going to get
when you're weakening the population.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. So this isn't meant to be like a super long video. This is just meant to like talk about what is becoming normalized. Like this isn't just an edgy thing. Like it could be.
It isn't just one thing. This is just something to bring attention to something, because in a month something else will come up and it'll be like, that's odd, weird. Why are you doing that type of thing?
Right. And it's it's going to get worse. Like that, I mean, unless like the culture somehow turns around, which under the current, a lot of people who are in charge of different states, I don't really see that as a thing. And I say states generally as like nations. So unless something happens, we're probably not going to get like a huge cultural shift, um, outside of a very big, you know, uh, not very big, but a lot of grace from God, like it, you know, to flip the culture. So, thanks for. I guess, John, do you have anything else to say, or?
No, no. I mean, we pretty much covered it. You just said, "Hey, we're gonna jump on real quick and talk about this," and I was like, "That's cool." So
Yeah, just because I thought, because it's just so silly. And I did use. I'm not going to link it here because if I link it, they're going to like send me. They're going to like hamper my distribution of this. Notthebee.com is where I got my information from. And they do a pretty good job of explaining even in more detail than what we said, because I'm not going to just read someone else's work
sure,
verbatim. Um, or at least not for journalism. I will for statistics and stuff, because it's literally meant to be distributed that way. So,
yeah.
but
Well, and I
yeah.
want to shout out our little guy in the comments saying, we purified it once, we'll do it again." It's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Whoops. I'm sorry,
we have
Patriot.
to.
Yeah. That's how we got to view it. So, thank you for joining me and John, and have a great day.
All right. Catch you later, guys.